Hey, in this video, I want to talk a little bit about how personal development and musical practice kind of go hand in hand and how they relate to creative self-expression. So I have a theory, which is that most musicians pick a lane. They identify as performers, composers, or teachers, right? And to keep growing after they've peaked at whatever their specialty is, they might benefit from like stepping outside that lane. So here's the thing, when you consider yourself an expert at one facet of music, the willingness to be a novice in another aspect of music, it creates a lot of vulnerability, it creates a lot of fear. But it's in that space, that vulnerable space, where you're looking at your own limits through a different lens. Let me give you some examples, again, for how it relates to me. So composing music, improvising music, both of those processes, they trigger like fears and questions for me, which you could argue like relate to my self-worth. This is why I feel that it's really useful for me to lean in to those areas where I feel that resistance: composition, improvisation, teaching, things that aren't like my natural original lane as a classical performer. Teaching also I see is like part analogous to being a therapist or a mentor or a friend. And I learned more about this recently from a music therapy specialist named Raquel Ravaglioli. And I'll spell that down in the description, and she suggested to me, we did an interview for the Creative Strings podcast, that to be a better teacher, you can really draw from a therapist's toolbox. And so that might include monitoring self-awareness, countertransference, transference, learning to be transparent. It's a lot of these kind of therapy tools. And so that kind of confirmed for me that there's this connection, right? Like this is a good thing for me to explore. Yeah, so over time I've found that a good teacher is always learning from their students as opposed to constantly yelling, do it this way. So instead of getting upset when students don't hear what I'm saying, or when people don't adopt my ideas even, I've come to accept that it's actually my responsibility, or it's like on me to be a better educator or a better advocate for how and why people should take my ideas on. And that's been like a switch, but it only happened from working on teaching. So this is an example of how becoming a better teacher can help me, I think, become a better person. Now, my lane as a teacher, which I've developed over the last 10, 20 years, consists of helping classical musicians to overcome their resistance to composition, improvisation, and related subjects. For a musician who's seeking more creative self-expression through music, an important question relates to how we can remove barriers to the creative process. So I've often described barriers to creativity for classical musicians in terms of three main areas, three main deficits in classical training. Okay, so first is the creative process. What is it? How do we practice it? How can we boil down the creative process to something which is totally independent from our skill level or our knowledge of theory or knowledge of style? Number two, after the creative process, I would say applied theory, which is basically internalizing harmony, internalizing rhythm, internalizing song forms, and other aspects of musical arrangement or construction, like practical theory, not necessarily the stuff classical musicians study in college. And number three, the third area where I feel like classical musicians don't really get a lot of work or don't get nurtured in has to do with style. And that includes the melodic, rhythmic, harmonic language, particular to any given style of music. So we can add one other thing to those three, which I would say is psychological barriers, which I already addressed before, i.e. the fear of trying something new. So I made an exercise, I shared an exercise in another video. It's in the card right here. I want you to take a look at it because this is an exercise that really prompts the creative process. It's kind of easier to understand it just by seeing the video. Basically what it does is it gives people really clear parameters and allows them to make choices and create in a very simple way. So I'd love for you to check out that video and then come back to this video. And even if you don't check it out, I want to sort of talk about what we learned from the exercise and why it's helpful. One of the things it shows us is that harmony isn't you don't necessarily need to know harmony, or you don't need to pre-plan harmony to be creative. So if we randomize harmony, if we ignore style, if we minimize technical challenges, we can still be really creative. If you do this, then it's going to be good for practice, teaching, composition, and performance. It can be useful for experts, teachers, students, and really anybody. And what you want to resist the urge to do is to sort of minimize this exercise as like not counting as real creativity. The whole point is it does. Like, this is a way to show you how to be creative. To me, finding ways to explore improvisation in a non-tonal setting is really valuable for all these reasons. You build confidence, you develop your authentic creative voice. It gives you increased self-awareness related to your musicianship, including intonation, listening, sound, etc. It'll help you generate new material. It can help you overcome resistance, fear, or self-judgment. So again, we're getting back to this whole area where creativity is really connected to self-development. And I've created another playlist. It's called Metsy Skitsy, with over 50 videos where I'm doing these non-tonal improvisations, just sort of as a model if you want to see some of that. There's a lot more on this channel, so definitely subscribe, because we're putting out stuff like every week. Learning to be creative relies on choosing structures that are really clear, such as playing quarter notes, such as choosing from these pitches, such as working within this meter. It doesn't require playing over a song form. It doesn't require playing over a chord progression. It doesn't require having a stylistic familiarity or a technical level of virtuosity. And finally, the connection between music and personal development isn't just about being a better musician. It also plays out around how we advocate or resist advocating for our work, for our music, for our service. No matter we're a teacher, composer, producer, performer, right? Like, we're afraid to advocate for ourselves. Most artists struggle with that. Like, we struggle with this conflict about, are people going to reject our music? Do people really want to pay enough for our music? Does it feel kind of slimy to share our music, or to like invite people or enroll people into the value of what we're offering as a teacher, as a composer, right? So this also, I think, is connected to our personal development. And I've got some blogs I'll link to down here about sales psychology for artists. So I want to thank you for watching this video. I'd love to get your feedback on it. I know it's kind of a long one for me. This is a really long video, and I would love to know if you have any thoughts on it. If it resonates for you, please leave a comment. And also, as usual, hit me up if you're interested in coaching for your career coaching. If you're interested in working through to become more of a creative musician, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a player, you can come to a workshop, or you can join me for a free private lesson at Creative Strings Academy, and I will link to all that stuff here. Please subscribe to this channel and stay connected. Thanks.